Hi guys, this is Miss Brown speaking. We are going to start out our week with an integer rules review. When I refer to integer rules, I'm referring to what do we do with those positive and negative numbers. So, we have already talked about the integer rules, but I noticed as we are working with our algebraic equations and expressions, or actually our algebraic expressions, I notice I'm getting a lot of computational errors. So we need to take time to review our rules. So we already talked about our four basic operators, which are adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. But depending upon what we're doing, we have different integer rules. Like our integer rule for subtraction is to rewrite the problem to show that we are adding the opposite, but then we have to follow the addition rules. If we are adding and we have the same sign, we have to add and then use the sign of both the numbers. However, if we have different signs, we have to subtract and use the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. And of course, the rules for multiplication and division are pretty well the same. A positive times a positive is a positive. A positive times, sorry, a positive divided by a positive is a positive. A negative times a negative is a positive. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. A negative times a positive is a negative, and a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So we have to be able to apply all of these rules and not confuse them. So to help us out as we are solving these problems, first you are going to place a check beside all the appropriate operations and the subsequent rules. If you do not have your checks and if they are not in the right place, then I will count this incorrect. It's important that A, we know the rules and then that we apply them. Next, you have to solve the problem and show your work. So, for instance, number two, we are adding. It says 248 plus negative 1027. So we are adding. So I'm going to put a check beside add. Now notice the 248 is positive, but the 1027 is negative. So these two numbers have different signs. So the rule that I have to use is to subtract and then use the sign of the number with the greater absolute value. Well, I know that this 1027 has the greater absolute value. Therefore, I know that whenever I get my final answer, it's going to be negative, okay? So don't forget to take care of your signs. So again, I am subtracting. So I'm putting that 1027 on the top because it has the greater absolute value, and I am subtracting from it 248. Then I go 7 minus 8, which I cannot do. I'm going to come over here and borrow. That 2 becomes a 1, and the 7 becomes a 17. 17 minus 8 is 9. Then I try to go 1 minus 4. I cannot do that. I'm going to go to my neighbor to borrow, but nobody's home. So I'm going to keep walking, and this 1 becomes a 0, and this 0 becomes a 10. And then I'm going to start the whole process over again. I go 1 minus 4, which I still can't do, I'm going to come over here and borrow. This 10 becomes a 9, and this 1 becomes an 11. 11 minus 4 is 7. 9 minus 2 is 7. And then 0 minus nothing is 0. But remember, our answer is negative. So our final answer would be negative 779. Guys, do you see all the arithmetic that I did? Do you see my process of borrowing and changing the numbers? When I am grading your paper, I'm looking to see that. If I just see numbers and an answer, I'll assume you use a calculator and I will count your answer incorrect. This is to be done without a calculator. Next problem. So our next problem is 726 minus negative 219. First, don't forget to place your check marks. So I'm going to subtract, okay? And then that means I have to rewrite to add the opposite. So I'm taking 726 and I am adding. Notice that subtraction is now add, and the opposite of a negative 219 is a positive 219. You see how I showed and I rewrote this? I expect to see that on your paper as well. If not, it's incorrect. Okay, so now I have to follow the addition rules. So now I am adding, so I'm placing a check right there because it says I have to place a check on all subsequent applicable rules. And since the 726 is positive and the 219 is positive, I have the same sign. So now I'm adding and using the sign of both. So I'm just going to stack those up, 726, and I'm adding 219 to that. 6 plus 9 is 15. Write down my 5, carry my 1. 1 plus 2 plus 1 is 4, and 7 plus 2 is 9. And don't forget, I'm using the sign of both. Well, this one, 726 is positive and 219 is positive. So my answer is positive. So my final answer is a positive 945. Another example. Okay, so this time I have 6,327 divided by negative 9. So I am multiplying or dividing. I'm putting my check there. Notice the 6,327 is positive, but the 9 is negative. So I'm working with a negative and a positive. So I know that my answer is going to be negative. So now I have to begin the process of division. I'm drawing my house. I expect to see your division work, guys. And the 6,327 goes on the inside. The 9 goes on the outside. 9 cannot go into 6, so I'm going to place a 0. However, 9 can go into 63 7 times. And 7 times 9 is 63. Subtract out, that is 0. Bring down the 2. 9 can go into 2 0 times. 0 times 9 is 0. Subtract out, that is 2. Bring down the 7. 9 can go into 27 3 times. 3 times 9 is 27. Subtract out, and I'm done. Well, almost. Remember, our answer is negative, so make sure that you are using the correct sign. It would be really a shame to do all that work and get the problem incorrect just because we have the wrong sign. Next and last example. This time I have 15 times negative 67. So my operation is actually multiplication. I'm putting my check mark. And notice one number is positive, one number is negative. So I know my answer is going to be negative. Now all I have to do is multiply them out. I'm going to put the 67 on top. It doesn't matter. I could put the 15 on top, but I choose to put the 15 on bottom because I think it's going to be easier for me. So I go 5 times 7 is 35. Write down my 5, carry my 3. 6 times 5 is 30, plus 3 is 33. And I am done with my number 5. Now I'm going to my number 1. But before I start, I have to add a 0. Then I go 1 times 7 is 7. 6 times 1 is 6. And I'm done. Now I have to add those up. And that's going to be a 5. 3 plus 7 is 10. Write down my 0. Carry my 1. 1 plus 3 plus 6 is 10. And I'm almost done, but I have to remember that my answer is negative. All right, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.